Hello, my name is Rick Cowley, and this is our PocketGamer.biz roundtable session. We do these every fortnight to discuss hot topics in the mobile games industry and get a bunch of experts in to discuss the topic. I am the editor of PocketGamer.biz and will be moderating and leading the panel as usual. This week, we will be discussing the importance and growth of online events. So obviously, the world has gone a bit mad and now we can't go outside anymore. So unfortunately, everything we have to do now has to be online in Zoom calls such as these. And we will be discussing what that means for the industry, what that means going forwards. Will we see physical events coming back and all that sort of thing? But first of all, I should introduce the panel with me. And I'm just going to go in order of who I can see. Although Leanne seems to be having a bit of problems, so I'm going to go to Sally. Sally, if you could quickly introduce yourself. Okay. Let's try Leanne. Leanne, if you could quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. If you can hear me.
Oh, I said Leanne, but
Leanne.
This is going fantastically well.
Well, in that case, let me.
Sorry, Leanne.
It's okay. I'm here now. I hope you can hear me. Thanks for having me. So my name's Leanne. I work over at Splash Damage. We're a studio based over in Bromley. We work on a bunch of games over there. We've just released like Gears Tactics, and we've just announced our game Outcasters, which is on stage. So, and I'm the PR and events manager, as I said, and I've been working on both of those areas for sort of over 8 years now. So yeah, I hope to share some experience today.
Fabulous, thank you. Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. In a previous life, I used to be known as Big Boy Barry, a video game TV presenter back in the day. These days, I'm the director of global PR for a company called Kevan Media. We're a leading gaming marketing agency. Been in the industry for a couple of decades, and Kevan Media, as I say, do a lot of events, both online and physical.
Thank you. Leon.
Right, it's my turn. Yay!
Yes.
Sorry. Hey, hello. Yes, hands. I'm Leon. Working for Ubisoft for the last 14 years. Currently global event director or director international events. Based out of Paris normally, but since the lockdown, based out of Amsterdam, which is much nicer. I mean, Paris is lovely, but you know.
Sally, now that you're back.
Yeah, hi everyone. What a great intro. I'm Steel Media's Senior Global Event Manager. I'm normally running around the world putting on amazing conferences for the games industry. Obviously this year has been slightly different. I've actually been working in events 18 years now, so I've seen quite a bit, but this is definitely a new one. But we keep smiling and we keep going, and in true style there is always hiccups along the way that we just have to go with.
Cool. And finally, Elspeth.
Hello. Hi. I'm Elspeth. I am working at Unity Technologies, and I'm based out of Copenhagen, but I am actually British, as you might be able to tell. I've been at Unity for about 3 years now, but in a previous guise, I was actually working at Pocket Gamer. I've always worked in the events industry, I'd say for the last 16 years. So yeah, games has been one of the main focuses, an industry that I've worked in. So I think, yeah, I've seen a little bit of everything, and I've worked with some of these guys before, so it's nice to join a panel and share our learnings, I guess. So looking forward to it.
And it's lovely to have you back. Right, so obviously we're going to be talking about online events and their growth and everything, but I always like to start by setting some context and looking a bit to the past before we get to this point. So let's talk a bit about physical events. How important were they for your business and for the industry as a whole, do we sort of think? Anyone feel free to jump in on this and just talk about like physical events, what they used to mean and how important they were for you.
I think, speaking for Kevan Media, a large portion of the business was circled around physical events. Gamescom, I think, traditionally would be our biggest show of the year. A lot of stuff happening in Europe for us. Obviously, I can't divulge figures, but it's a significant chunk of change that's been lost due to physical events around that show. And, of course, throughout the world as well. So we also put on events across Europe and in North America. And they were very important to us, both, trade-focused and consumer-focused as well. A significant portion of our business based around events. So we've had to pivot pretty quickly in order to recapture some of that business.
I was also going to jump in with something. I didn't want to overspeak someone.
No, feel free to just jump in.
I was going to say, I think we, certainly within the games industry, a lot hinges off big events like GDC, Gamescom, other global events, and then suddenly those kind of disappear or they go global, but it's whether they still have the same impact on the business with regards to kind of goals and strategies and revenue targets that we're all kind of working towards. So I think the physical event was always super important for every company that I've worked at, but it's quite interesting to see how everybody's pivoting and changing and making things work in the online way and hopefully getting the same results, but not always, as I'm sure we'll discuss.
For me, if I may jump in, my job was evolved around live events. Live event director, our goal was to produce events like Gamescom, China Joy, and so on and so forth. So we had to pivot our entire way of working to digital, creating digital experiences. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. Pocket Gamer, that's what we're here. We're on a PocketGamer.biz roundtable. I would normally, this time of year, have probably delivered upwards of 40 events with Pocket Gamer, from those big conferences to the small, very big indie pitches, to mixers and stuff like that. So having to make that big change really quickly has been intense, but in some ways it's been a lot of fun. As long as we're staying connected, that's all we can do.
They're all very different as well, aren't they? All of those shows. I mean, if you think about it, the obvious ones are the Gamescoms, the GDCs, the E3s, but then
Pocket
you have
Gamer London.
Well, Pocket Gamer London. But what a different show that is to something like E3. And what I'm trying to say is our industry is so broad now and so mature that there are, niche events and not so niche events, more consumer, more trade. And, really when you add them up, there's always something happening. And they're usually pretty important, the big shows, certainly. Yeah. So that's a lot of events, a lot of networking, a lot of publicity opportunities all taken from us. And companies like ourselves have to find a way that we can speak for our clients, right?
Yeah, totally. For us, for example, for Ubisoft, and I think for the entire game industry to chime in on E3, it's the biggest communication platform of the year. And when that gets canceled, which it did, obviously, you're brought to a position where you have to rethink and try to recreate a platform that's non-existent until then. And it's like, okay, how do we create something from scratch? How do we take this Ubisoft brand, this Ubisoft experience that we normally have at E3 and transform it into something that is digital? And we transform it into Ubisoft Forward, which went quite well as well, thank God.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I just think it's a very strange time. I'd normally be getting ready for Gamescom and with people face to face. It's so important around this time of year, and it's definitely missed all the faces that you'd normally see on the circuit. So it's definitely been a change. It's definitely been a time to sort of make more effort digitally with people and connect, have phone calls, do Zoom calls and things like that. So yeah, but I think the industry is super adaptable. So I'm kind of excited to see from here, because I imagine that we are going to continue forward with a very strong digital presence in events. So yeah.
Cool. So let's move on a bit to actually talk about the online events now. So I feel like obviously everything's changed and everything's now way online, and that's the only way you can do it. But online events, they're not entirely new. because we've had sort of that shift. We've seen Nintendo doing directs, and we've seen more and more like online conferences and sort of that style. But I guess it's new. I guess how important were the online events before the pandemic started, and it's kind of obvious how it's changed now, but how has like it changed for you? How has it impacted how you do business and stuff? Leanne, I'll start with you there because you're already unmuted.
So, I mean, it's a bit different for me at the moment. We haven't, the last time I did sort of a live engagement at an event with the game is Dirty Bomb, and we sort of did press events there. So it's been a while since I've had that kind of pressure to do that. So it's been a kind of gap for me anyway. Sorry, what was your question originally? Sorry, I'm really sorry.
That's fine. How important were online events before the pandemic started?
So, for us, it's always been a mix as well. And I think it's always been there, right? You've got, starting with sort of Gamescom and stuff, there's always been like a high level of like Twitch presence and things like that, and people do it like kind of having those two things combined, and it is, you walk around the show and you see those sorts of live things going on, because it's hugely important. Like the games industry, obviously, it's a global audience, and not everyone can come to the event itself. So it's always been important to pair whatever you're doing at a conference to have that content go out digitally as well on your social media or anywhere else. So yeah, I think having the both has always been super important. If that kind of answers your question, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, they've always had their place, right? I mean, Nintendo can get away with a Nintendo Direct, and Sony have something very similar, but they can do that because they're the format holders, right? But I think for much smaller companies to be able to do their own digital or online event would usually fall flat. And why E3 works so well, yes, all the main conferences are now streamed live, but they've always worked so well because they have that live audience as well. It's like watching WWE, it's like watching theater, right? So, yes, they've been streaming, but without the people there, it's a very different proposition. So to be honest, I don't think I think it was a secondary concern for a lot of companies doing it online, and much smaller publishers would always prefer an event like GDC or E3 or Gamescom to make a splash. But obviously now that those options aren't open, it's gone a whole 180, and they're the only way of reaching consumers now.
One of the things that you shouldn't forget about for speaking from a publisher's perspective on live events, of course you have the consumer side, and you were touching on the business side of it. But for example, for Ubisoft, normally at an event like E3 or Gamescom, we also do our demos for media, influencers, and so on and so forth, which is a challenge working remotely. So for Ubisoft Forward, we decided to work with Parsec to have these remote possibilities in order to have people from all over the world play our games, because that was the main challenge. It's cool. It's cool if people get to see our content in a conference, and creating a digital show is relatively easy and less expensive than doing a full conference. However, at the same time, you're missing one of the biggest aspects of what generates this reach for us, which is people actually playing our games.
Cool. Yeah, that sort of answers all that question. Online events themselves, obviously, I think the main benefit, obviously, is that it's global and everybody can kind of join in. But what are some of the other benefits to running them compared to having something physically? Sally, you told me not to pick on you, but I am going to jump to you on this one, just because obviously, as you say, you would have done about 40 physical events now, and now you're reducing it to online. Like, what have you found to be the benefits of doing it online compared to being there in the flesh kind of thing?
There's, I guess, a number of ways you can look at it. Benefit, you are getting that bigger audience, or you're reaching an audience that couldn't make sort of a B2B event due to finance, due to workload. We're reaching different target audiences, speakers, etc. like that. There is also a massive environmental impact. We're not all flying around the world, we're not all printing material, we're not, doing that. So there is this, it's really, yes, Leon, it's really sad, and I really miss it. I really miss the hugging. But yeah, the environmental impact, it was something I was beginning to look at the end of last year, just how we can change the way we're doing real life events anyway to kind of mitigate those impacts. And this year it's just stopped altogether, you know. So that for me is one of the biggest positives.
I'm not sure it'll ever go back to exactly how it was before as well, because now so many companies that perhaps previously wouldn't allow their employees to work from home, or didn't want the Zoom calls, have now got used to it, right? I think you can see a lot less business flying. I think you can see a lot less travel. If people can dial in and be at home, then that's great. Well, it's true, but then also for the media, some of the media prefer to stay home as well. It's just more convenient for them. It really is. It's much easier for a lot of journos to be at home and log in rather than have to take a whole day out sometimes to go to London or to go to a big city where a game is being played just to see a game. And that's no disrespect to any of the publishers, but it is much more convenient if they can take an hour out of their day, log in and watch an online event take place in that, rather than have to take a whole day. Or something like E3, that's at least a week out of somebody's calendar, right? So there's the convenience factor, there's the price factor, the audience, of course, you're going to get, but I still don't think you can beat the real buzz of a.
You can never ever beat that real buzz of an event. Sorry,
Agreed.
Never going to happen.
I think it's also a matter of having a shared experience, all together in a room, watching a conference or playing video games, being able to actually embed or anchor these experiences into your brain, like, hey, I did this together with a group of peers, of fellow geeks, and that kind of stuff. And I think that's why, and maybe I'm already moving on to the next question, sorry, but I think that's why in the end, physical events will come back. Especially we need that, especially since we operate in the digital realm. We need these real face-to-face, not Zoom. Zoom is cool. Real face-to-face opportunities to interact, to hug, and it needs to share and to bond.
100% agree, Leon.
Leon, I was in the audience when a live panda came, not a live panda, but a panda came out and danced live on stage.
Did you like that idea?
You see, you can't replicate that on Zoom, I don't think.
We tried. We tried the panda, but he was in lockdown. So yeah, what could you do? Fat pandas don't make good TV.
But that's the experiences that we as event professionals, that's what we do, and we're all missing it. And I think everybody that comes to our events is missing it. And we will never be able to replicate that in digital. It's fantastic that we can keep people connected and keep those communications going this year. Give me a live event, now.
No, but it'll come back, I think. And I'm sure that's one of the other points that we'll come back onto. But I think it is just keeping the connections alive, because, we have our connections, we know, but the thing that we miss is those random networking opportunities. You bump into someone, you don't know them, but you're best mates after 3 days, and then you're doing business with them. And I think that's where it's really difficult in this current climate. And that's where I think we have to be clever when we design our events and make sure that we have these kind of meeting and networking tools. Because otherwise you can't really meet someone random online. It's just kind of impossible, but it happens.
Yeah, it is possible. I tried. Especially in beginning of the lockdown, I want to meet up. I need that face-to-face kind of not per se with my family, because who cares, but more with the whole the business side of I want to interact, I want to connect, I want to network. And then you set up these random calls with people that you meet on LinkedIn, okay, well, let's share experiences and that kind of stuff. Sometimes it works out really well. Most of the times it's awkward.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah, that awkward. Hi, who are you?
What do you want?
I can't give you a hug from here. But it'll be fine.
Virtual hug. Virtual
hug, I know. So not the same.
Leanne, were you going to jump in?
No, yeah, just to echo what everyone's saying, it isn't the same as meeting people face to face, and it's certainly not the same when, for example, you've got a game to show to people, and you get gamers sitting down and they're playing, and you get to see their reaction to the stuff you've put in, and you just can't get that in any other way, and it's a very special experience doing that at these big conferences, and then going back to the dev team and letting them know how it went, and letting them understand how players connected with the game, and what to change and things like that. So that's definitely something that's missing at the moment. But I know that there's other ways that you can do that virtually, but yeah, there's nothing like the real show.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, one of the obvious sort of things that we could talk about is like, how do you do a show really well, and how do you like make sure everybody has a great time? But one thing I really want to sort of go straight to now is more like about the mistakes and the problems that we've had, because obviously everybody's learning, everybody's constantly finding new ways to do things, and we've I'll let Sally explain that some of the first Pocket Gamer Connects Digital didn't really go off quite as well as we had hoped. We've sorted out the problems, but what mistakes do you think companies are making when they're organizing their own digital events? And that's either from an organizational perspective, stuff that you've learned, or from the developer perspective and the PR perspective. Like what could events be doing more to help you in that regard? Anyone? Sally, if you want to defend
Part
us.
of me from my event head brain goes, get an event manager to help you plan it. Don't just go off on one and think you know what you're doing, because events are still events, whether we're doing those live or we're doing them digitally. They still need to be curated, they still need the content, and you still need the connections, and you need a professional to do that. That's simple as. Obviously Pocket Gamer did come out of the blocks pretty quickly. We had a conference up and running 3.5 weeks after lockdown. I've never learned so much tech in all my life so quickly. I thought I was too old. But it's, again, we're event industry professionals, so we tend to come up with solutions anyway. We go, we have to run this, we have to find out how to do it, so we will. And things will hiccup. They do in live events as well as digital. So we keep learning and we keep changing and we keep trying harder and harder.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with sort of event professionals now there's a real need, I think, for like really good producers, really good coordinators with events, because all of a sudden, as we kind of move into this digital space with events, you need people to train people how to speak to a camera rather than to a live audience where you're getting that real-time feedback. So I think there's so much for everyone to learn, whether you're managing the event, organising it, or whether you're the person suddenly having to do a talk to a camera rather than a real life audience. So I think it's just going to be a learning curve for everyone, and it's going to be really exciting. So yeah.
Well, just to echo what Leanne and Sally basically said as well, it is different to a physical event. There are different considerations that you have to have. You've got to make sure that you hold people's attention, which is, I think, much harder online as well. So get a professional to put it together, because you only have one chance to make that first impression. So company like Kevan Media, we understand the pitfalls that are very easy to encounter along the way, and we always try to guide our clients and make something that's bespoke and customized to them as well. I think the only other mistake I won't say the only other mistake, but one mistake that we're seeing at the moment is that it's like the Wild West. Everybody's realized that these physical events aren't happening and they have to go online. So where do they throw their money behind? Is it the IGN? Is it future publishing? Is it, there are a lot of these different events that are coming up. And I think some smaller publishers need gently guiding as to, what's going to give them the best bang for the buck. Does it make sense to do their own bespoke events? Or does it make sense to become part of something bigger, be it Gamescom or, as I say, the IGNs, the future publishings, whatever it may be? So it's about finding that right vehicle for them and realizing that, the cheapest way may not be the best way to make that impact. With the physical events, we have those big keystones, as Leon said earlier. E3 is a huge one, but there's no sort of real E3 live at the moment. So everybody's doing different things, and it's a little bit of a weird year at the moment. It's a bit of a weird year that most of the big games haven't been announced. We don't know when the next Xbox is coming out. We don't know when the next PlayStation is coming out. And all this information would have by now been set in stone, because you use the big events to plant the flag in the ground. So at the moment, everybody's off doing their own different thing. And I think that needs to be corralled, because I think it was Leanne who said we ain't going back to normal anytime soon.
Any other mistakes people have seen? Elspeth? Oh.
Well, I think I'm coming at this more from the angle of a company that sponsors a lot of events. We actually haven't hosted our own Unity self kind of curated event as yet. We are working on something at the moment. So I've seen quite a lot of companies going online or events going online in a very short space of time, like Sally was talking through. And I actually think Pocket Gamer is one of the better ones that we've obviously taken part in, and has, you know, happened to turn around everything so quickly, and actually has best practices and guidelines, and it's super organized. So that's why we obviously support that. But there's a lot of other events where we've seen everything just happens so late in the process of planning. So you don't get the usual lead time that you would to plan, and certainly in a large company like Unity, we can't just make decisions overnight. We can't just make a new video of someone talking about a product overnight. These things take weeks and then days, and they need approval process and sign off and all that fun stuff. So for events to kind of give us deliverables a week out from a show, it's been quite problematic for us, but obviously we've made it work. But that's something that we've all kind of had to take internally and feed that back up the kind of content creation chain. And now people are having to work differently in this new online kind of world that we're all in. And obviously it's a lot more work for everyone. It's a lot more pressure. But that's how it is going to be for the foreseeable. So I think people are just adjusting and kind of, knowing, oh, we knew about this event, but we didn't know how it was going to work. We didn't know the specs. We didn't know what platform. We didn't know anything until like a week before. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been quite stressful. But I think things have worked out how we wanted them to in the main. I mean, some of the things that I think I've seen that have been bad at other events, if you want to go into it, I'm not going to name names. But I think doing anything like talk-wise live, I know you guys have kind of like mastered it. But other events that we've taken part in, like live sessions where the whole platform's collapsed, things haven't worked, people haven't been able to log in, viewers haven't logged in, so they haven't seen the session. Everything we try and do is pre-recorded and then questions as live, because I think that just makes everyone feel a little bit more comfortable. And then I also think, I think just knowing the audience that you're hoping to attract is also really important for getting people to attend, getting people to sponsor and be part of. You can't always just assume it would have been the same audience that would have come to a physical event. We think it would be, but you don't always know. So kind of trying to find out and investigate your kind of audience as much as you can and provide stats, I think, for organisers is really useful. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of, I'm sure we've all seen them.
Seen them and done them.
Yeah.
But the only way we do learn, the only way you learn sometimes is from making that mistake, and that didn't quite work. We need to revisit it and need to look at it again. But we're all trying, I think, to deliver as much as we can in those experiences, and hoping it works. And if not, go and bang my head against a brick wall for just a couple of minutes, or have a glass of wine and then go and fix it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think people are a lot more lenient as well. There's less kind of pressure maybe on having a live performance or something. It's kind of like, let's see what happens every time I log into a new event and see if the platform crashes on the first day, or what are people doing, how are they kind of connecting and networking. It's kind of, you don't know, and you're not kind of like...
Interestingly, looking at that, else, I do some work for other industries, and it is the gaming industry that has just gone with this and gone with the digital events and gone with the world of virtual and just gone, yeah, we'll give it a go. And I think they're just so much more adaptable, and maybe they're just, the gaming world are just fantastic and they're just used to trying it.
Yeah, I think everyone's more tech savvy as well. I work in industries as well, and a lot of the events just cancelled, postponed until next year in the kind of AEC and ATM industry. They didn't want to even try and work on something, because I think the type of attendees are less likely to sit behind a computer and join sessions and go to a virtual expo and do those things. I think you're right. The industry really has latched onto it and grabbed it and ran with it, because actually I think people want it. I think there's much more desire to still be connected and still take part in something.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. We all love each other.
I think there's no doubt on that, Elspeth. But you know, you'd hope that the video game industry would be slightly more adaptable than, I don't know, an insurance industry or something to using online events. You'd hope so, but it's not just that we want it. Of course, I think that it's that we need it, right? Because that's how we disseminate information is at these big shows. And I think other forms of entertainment perhaps are still, you know, a little more open to, you see, you know, when a new movie's coming out, trailers go everywhere, and then you see the stars on chat shows or whatever. There are different forms of marketing when it comes to different forms of entertainment. But I think for gaming, these big shows are very, very important at making a splash. And, you know, certainly for some of the smaller publishers and the indies, you know, they absolutely need that forum to get seen and to get noticed. So it's not just that we want it. I think that it's absolutely imperative. We need it.
Cool. Just move on to sort of cover the flip side. I kind of wanted to steer this towards, we talked about Gamescom and E3 and the big events, and Gamescom is actually starting this week as a digital thing, so worth talking about and remembering, because to be honest, I completely forgot, but we'll come on to that later. Something that I'm curious about is from a more B2B perspective. So obviously we have our Pocket Gamer Connect events, and there's all sorts of other events that have been happening. White Nights went digital and other things like that. From both an organizer and an attendee sort of point of view, because I'm sure some of us, we've all like attended these various conferences. Like, how should and how do you provide value for attendees at the events? Because obviously, like the main value I've always thought to B2B events is to get in front of people, to have those meetings, that kind of thing, and that's obviously a lot harder. How do you provide a similar value or a different kind of value through like online events, particularly in a B2B role? Leon, we haven't heard from you in a bit, so I'm going to throw to you if you have any thoughts on this.
I think it's basically, how do you throw value, or how do you give value to B2B, is by giving them what they want. The example that I gave earlier in regards of, for us, B2B was making sure that people or business people get to play our games. Making sure that it's not just us talking and saying that our games are great, which of course they are, but it's really allowing people the opportunity to play from their homes when they are ready for it, and just give it to them in the way it is. And I think if you do that, if you build that in, then for us, at least for Ubisoft, it worked really well. I think some of the other challenges that we have seen, because of course these B2B meetings that we have, for example, for retail or for other stuff, or partnerships, these kind of things, they go through Zoom or they go through Teams or whatever, and they work it out. They just basically redirect everyone to our Ubisoft Forward stream, being like, okay, you go watch that. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. If you want a demo, we can set it up. But no face-to-face meetings.
I guess Pocket Gamer, we've got our meeting system still up, you know, that's connecting people and that. Obviously, we had a hiccup on the first one, but Digital 2 was so much better in that. We had something, I think it was over 2,000 meetings, probably more than that. I'd have to double check with Dave, because I'm not allowed in the meeting back end because I tend to break it. But you know, it's making those connections. We also we ran a Discord server alongside Digital 2 as well, because again that was building those communities, trying to kind of have that more natural conversations, I guess, which is where those random meetings come in, and it's just trying to build that, isn't it, really?
That's just it, is understanding your audience, isn't it? And I think Leon hit the nail on the head there, absolutely. And really, just to echo him, we have to remember that, you know, even the B2C shows, even your PAX or your Gamescoms or whatever it may be, there's always a strong B2B element there as well. There's always business to be done. So it's understanding that, you know, distributors or retailers, you know, they don't want to carve out a part of their day just to watch a game trailer or to watch a presentation that they can see on YouTube. They're going to have their own questions, concerns, worries, whatever it may be, that they need answered. So it's about making sure that you can pivot and you can cater to all the audience that you're trying to reach.
Elspeth, sorry, you were trying to jump in.
I was trying. I stopped. When we were talking about Discord, I think that has been a really successful way to kind of make a kind of expo networking environment, as you would kind of call it. And I've certainly seen it used quite successfully. I know that when I was taking part in Nordic Game, they used it really well, and you really got that kind of personality and the kind of vibe that you get from that event if you've ever attended it. Is kind of all about the community and the people who organize it, and you really felt that they were kind of running the show and pushing things along and talking to people, and it felt like it was Nordic Games conference. And yeah, I just think having something like that alongside the kind of streaming of content works really well, and also then allowing, I say, exhibitors or sponsors to have access to post things in there has been quite successful for us as a sponsor for promoting things and getting people to give us feedback. That was certainly successful. And then I think I was just going to say as well about Meet to Match, which we always love an event that has that because it makes it super easy for our sales teams to engage. Everyone knows how to use it. You log in and it's their job done. They don't have to scour through, attendee lists and then look through Salesforce and find out if they know these people. It's super easy. So if an event has that, it's a real bonus for us, and we always kind of look to sponsor events that have that. Or a similar platform. I know there's others available.
But I think it's like what you said, digital is an enabler essentially. So it can allow you to do all of these cool things. So you don't have to watch every single show. You don't have to have the when you're at E3 and Gamescom, you cannot possibly speak to everyone you want to speak to during those couple of days you're there. And like having these sorts of things you're talking about, these Meet to Match, it's just amazing because you're suddenly able to have a really good way of trying to get through as many meetings as possible. And if not, you've got a central hub where you can say, look, let's have a chat afterwards, and you feel like maybe you can connect with more people. So I don't know. I think there's lots of ways that we could start to evolve to make it so you can actually do way more with the time that you've got through digital functionalities. Yeah.
Cool. We have a question from the audience, which I would like to jump to because it's something that was on my mind as well. But always like to have questions from the audience. If anybody in the Zoom chat wants to throw something into the Q&A, please do. So an anonymous attendee asks, depending on how long the pandemic continues to affect live events, do you think there is potential to encounter virtual event fatigue? And if so, how can you overcome this? So on a personal note, I kind of am already experiencing a bit of this because, as Alex was sort of referring to, there have been a lot of consumer events over the summer and all different sort of little fragments and that kind of thing. The Summer Games Festival itself was basically just about 30 different events, and catching up on them is very difficult, and that's one of the benefits of E3, in my mind, is having everything in one place. So how, do you agree that there's fatigue around these online events, and how can we start to fix that? Alex, because I mentioned you, I'm going to jump to you.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Rick, and thanks. I don't want to call you out, but let's just be honest. You had forgotten Gamescom was
exactly.
And you know what? I had too, but we would never have done that in a physical. if the physical show was going on, right? It's just such a huge show. So now, absolutely, I think you're already starting to see that fatigue because everything is kind of spread out and everybody's doing their own thing, right? And I think that's what needs to happen. We need to club together around a big event, and I think we need to become a little more disciplined as an industry and start trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And where to plant our flag. And you're absolutely right that, yes, Leanne was correct in saying you can't possibly get to see everybody at E3, but it does focus the mind, right? You've got 3 days. So you've got 3 important days to get those announcements out there to make sure that you see the most vital contacts and networks that you really need to meet up with. And that does focus the mind a little bit. At the moment, everything is a bit too spread out. So I'd like to see the industry get behind a couple of key big events, just like we did in a physical world. And I think that would be a big step forward. At the moment, everybody's getting a bit bored and a bit confused as to where they can find out the news that they're looking for, if their show is going to be more B2B focused or B2C focused, or indeed is it going to be more orientated towards PC or console. So I think these are some of the issues that we need to figure out going forward.
Leon, in particular, I'd like to hear from you because obviously Ubisoft is sort of in this ecosystem now and is doing your own sort of events with the Ubisoft Forward, as you said. Like, have you thought about how to combat that sort of fatigue and that kind of thing?
No, not really. I really approach it, and maybe I'm naive or something, but I approach it from the perspective of people want to see content. If you create cool content, people will tune in. If you have cool games or whatever products and you manage to get some promotion, you're all good. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, for Ubisoft Forward, just we were not the first one to do our conference. I think we were halfway during that summer of games, and our conference outperformed E3 by factor 2 point something. So I don't think there's fatigue. Of course, yes, we all want to have our physical events, 100% for sure. But at the same time, I think there's a huge opportunity for the industry, actually for anyone, especially also for the smaller parties out there. If your content is cool, if your content is differentiating enough, original enough, people will eat it up. I mean, that's the thing. People are hungry for content. I mean, I think everyone here on this call right now have watched every movie and series on Netflix. I mean, how many times can you watch whatever the series? I mean, it's like, at a certain point in time, Rick and Morty gets boring too. but that's the thing. People are hungry for content. I think that anyone that can create intriguing, relevant content for your audience will have an audience.
Congratulations on those stats, by the way. I wasn't aware of that. 2.6, did you say, or 2 point?
2 point something. I don't know the exact. I mean, I do know, but
you need a raise, Leon.
Yeah, I can agree with that content thing. Everyone is hungry for good content. And I think that's where you can kind of top and tail your events. I think maybe the industry does need to do this a little bit more. You know, it's not just suddenly, oh, there's an event tomorrow. Oh, I forgot about it. I'm going to quickly tune into Gamescom because I'm probably going to do the same. Like, oh, what's going on over there, you know? And I think if you can, before we get to the event, I'd like to see more really good content on their other platforms. So whether it's a landing page on the website, you're going in, you're like, okay, I know exactly what this event is for and where I need to go to get the content that I need, whether I'm a consumer, whether I'm B2B, whatever. So I do think that that's where the discipline should come in to say, like, you know, we're going into a content world, so businesses, small businesses, everyone needs to kind of create really good video content, really good social assets, and just go from there and constantly remind audiences why they should invest any time at all in this particular event or this particular live stream. So yeah.
Cool. Any Sally or Elspeth, any thoughts on fatigue in B2B in particular?
Fatigue, I can look at it from an event manager's point of view, because when you spend 60 hours in Zoom in a week, you get a bit frazzled. And you definitely become what I call a Zoom bee, and you just like pop out the other end, just go, I can't talk to anyone, I'm just going to sit outside for 12 hours. But I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm used to it, and it is, you know, it's just the way I work. I'm in a screen all the time, and I just enjoy being able to see people. So I don't know, maybe it's just who I am, but yeah, I understand that there are a lot of events and you may not want to listen to it, but content's always been key, whether that's live or digital, and it's just making it more apparent that content is where you need to be. So yeah, I absolutely agree with the rest of them, really.
Yeah, I think probably the same as Sally. I think there is, yeah, it just feels like a little bit that some of the events, maybe there is too much content that's been seen before. It's not fresh, it's not kind of engaging, it's just people talking for the sake of talking all day. And then when you're at work and you kind of, maybe you're going to tune in for 1 hour a day on your lunch break. I also sometimes feel that maybe those speakers don't even get many views or many kind of people tuning in to see the talk live or on demand. So sometimes it's not even worth for the speaker or the sponsor or even the attendees. It's kind of just churning out content for the sake of content, and that's not what we want to do. I think that's going to just give the whole industry a bad kind of name, and it's just going to stop people wanting to tune in. So yeah, I think doing something en masse that maybe kind of focuses everybody's goals and maybe pinpoints it into kind of main events at either end of the year, then that would be way better for everyone. And every week there's a new event that's on for 3-4 days a week, maybe 2 weeks. And it's
So we need a Pocket Gamer mega event then, yeah?
yeah.
A whole month of Pocket Gamer Connects. How hard can it be?
We could give it a go, can we, Rick?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, the content is king, and Leon's absolutely right on that. I think, all credit to Ubisoft, who do such an amazing job with their events. But, we have a very big company there, a very big publisher, and you have your social channels and your community channels and goodness knows what else to be able to broadcast the fact that you're going to go live with an online event or content drop, whatever it may be. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of the smaller publishers and some of the smaller studios is that, they've got something to say, they've got something to show. What's the right forum for those guys, right?
Well, actually, if I may jump in, we had a few slots for indie gamers in our show as well. And I think that's in the responsibility that maybe some of the bigger platforms or publishers might have.
Right.
Okay, use the platform that you have. Don't be greedy and share the love with also the smaller platforms.
I agree. Kudos to you, Leon.
Cool. This is actually a question, and I'm trying to formulate in this in my head for the last 5 minutes, but something I've noticed on sort of from the journalist perspective is that we've got all these events, and there's an expectation that we will tune in and see all the content and stuff. What I'm seeing less of is developers sort of saying we're going to be at this event. I think it's kind of drifting in towards like a surprise drop territory where everybody's sort of going, okay, we'll be at this and everybody's gonna be watching it and bam, here's the game. Everyone's gonna be super excited. Is that like, do you think that's going to continue, I guess, as we keep going into this digital thing? Because previously you had a physical event. People would be emailing me 2 weeks in advance to say, hey, I'm going to be at Gamescom. Do you want to talk about the game? Like, is that, are we going to see a return to that? Or are we going to see like more sort of surprise drops and people just sort of jumping into an event and expecting there to be eyes? I don't know who would want to jump in on that. Alex, I'm going to go back to you from a sort of a PR perspective on that front.
No worries. I think, surprises are always good. They're a key part of our industry. Everybody loves a good surprise, and I think for the format holders, if Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo are going live with something, then surprises work really well there. But again, for some of the mid-tier publishers and some of the smaller guys, the indie guys, then, surprises are always good as long as we know that people are going to be watching. But it is important that they are able to find an audience and that people that do follow those genres of games know where they're going to be and where they're going to be announcing and so on and so forth. So, yes, they have their place, but it's not always a great idea.
Cool. I'll just leave that as sort of a random question then that sort of popped into my head. We're about 10 minutes.
I think it's an interesting one. And as I say, it's when you're watching the PlayStation 5 unveil and you see a new Ratchet and Clank game or a new Spider-Man game, that's fantastic. But they have the luxury of knowing that they've got the world watching those guys at that time, right? And I think some of the smaller publishers and indies, they need to make sure that game is going to be seen. Otherwise, you have that one chance to make a first impression. And if you miss it, then their entire launch can be thrown out, and that's really bad news if you're a small publisher.
We all just need to be a little bit more creative. I mean, all of us also. I mean, it's like looking at and that's the thing. Also, to go back to a earlier question that you asked, Rick, what's about the mistakes that people make when it comes to producing these online experiences. I mean, just speaking from the Ubisoft perspective, I think the tendency that we have is to fall back on what we know. It's like, okay, how do we translate this live event into a digital experience? How do we create a virtual room where people can meet up in VR and blah, blah, blah? And that's all cool, but nobody cares. And people just want to have cool content. And I think that, how do you say that? It's easy to fall back on what you know, but we need to, as an industry, be more creative. And maybe it's not that you don't go the typical route of announcing a new game as indie or as bigger publisher. You go a different route. And maybe first impressions, who cares about first impression? Maybe there's another way in as well. And that's the thing. It's like this whole situation has forced us, event managers and the industry, to rethink. And like, okay, take a break, look at what you've been doing, and realize that you need to do something different. And don't try to hold on to nostalgia. It's gone. It's done. I mean, for the next foreseeable future, we will have a situation where live events will be tricky. That's what it is. So you need to evolve. And you need to think, okay, how can we then leverage all the tools that we have in today's society to make some noise around their products? And that could be whatever. And indeed, I mean, yes, Ubisoft, we have the platforms and we have the for sure. But at the same time, we also have to invest in media buy. We also have to do other stuff. And so we also did some other things that didn't per se cost money that just helped align the stars and make sure that we indeed reach these numbers that we did. Anyway.
Elspeth, do you have something on that?
I was just going to add something cool that's coming up this week, actually, at Gamescom, is the Indie Arena booth, which is basically a kind of online virtual booth / MMO game that Supercrowd developers in Germany have formulated and jumped on and created in the last, I think, 3-4 months. And it's going to be super exciting, and I think it's like a real great opportunity for indie developers to actually get their games in front of, you know, the publishers and the media at the event while still kind of being within like a virtual world. So I think that's going to be exciting, something to watch this week, because that is a really kind of a good opportunity, I guess, that they don't have a lot of these virtual events, is to have like a little kiosk, a little booth that they brand up like you would see, you know, at Pocket Gamer, where everyone gets a table and they bring the posters. It's kind of like that, but in a virtual world, which is made of Unity as well. So, small plug. But yeah, I think if you get a chance this week to check it out, it's going to be super interesting and probably a new way that we can look at building kind of small or medium or large online virtual expos. So, something to talk about for.
Give it a look.
Yeah.
Cool. And on that sort of topic, so we've got a few minutes left, so we'll sort of start wrapping up and heading towards a conclusion here. But how do we see digital events evolving and growing over the coming months, over the coming years? And I'm going to fold what would be my last question into that as well. It's like, as that evolution, are we going to see physical events taking over again, or are we going to see digital events and physical events living in harmony? There's a lot to unpack there, so feel free to just take that however you like. Leanne, I'm going to jump to you first because we have not heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I think sort of reiterating what I'm saying, I think there's going to be a space for both of them. You can see the big games companies just driving their own digital events and taking a lot of ownership and doing their own thing, like Microsoft and stuff. You know, there is going to be a big change, and I think there is space for both of them. Of course, like, humans are sociable creatures at the end of the day. They do need to see people, they do want to sit and have a coffee, but it's an awareness that, just like everything else in life, things are more digital. You know, we're going to be working from home more, we're going to not be seeing our colleagues as much, so everything around us is going to change. And I think the games industry is one of those, you know, industries where, you know, gamers interact with each other online. Like, games are an online practice, and we'll definitely be able to forge that sort of identity into the way we do events as well. I think we'll have both, but I think, you know, just to go back to the environmental impact of not having everyone travel to one place every single time is a big win. So there's a win there. But, you know, as long as we can find those balances and just sort of ebb and flow of like, okay, how can we marry up the need to be sociable, the need to meet people and have meaningful interactions, with having a digital place where we've got a bigger audience, a lot more people can attend. You know, it's just fine. I think we'll find that balance between those two things, because we have all the tools in our toolbox. We just need to bring them out, be creative with our content, be creative with how we meet. And yeah, so I'm kind of positive about it. But I can, hearing this kind of need to support indies as well is something certainly I've taken on board in my mind from chatting to you guys, because it is something that we as an industry need to club together and make sure that we are supporting some of those voices that might get lost in the crowd as we move towards a more digital space. So yeah, lots to think about. But yeah.
You know, I think if you look at if we take esports, for example, the industry is you know, still discovering the awesome force of esports as a spectator sport, right? You know, so live events aren't going to go away; they're going to come back. Of course, they will. We want that. But I don't think things will be the same probably ever again. I really don't. I think you will find a nice mix, and it will be a healthy mix. And where it saves the environment and a lot of pain and heartache and time out of the office, and an online event works, that's great. Where it makes sense to get gamers together and celebrate, our industry and our love of gaming, then that's also going to happen, right? So E3 or Gamescom or events of those nature, they're not going to go away. Once there's a way of dealing with COVID, things will generally, I think, get back to normal. But I think you'll see them being supplemented by online events as well, and there'll be a much more intelligent mix of methods of communication and reaching the audience you're trying to hit.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think, when it won't fully go back, I think a live event or events will just become a mix of the two. It'll be a live show with streamed content, so you are reaching those people that can't attend or can't take the time out, but allowing the space for people that do want to do it, and it'll just become this really lovely balance. But
do you think that B2B events will become more of the live component, and then the consumer stuff will be more digital? Could that be like a fragmentation that we might see?
Actually, the other way around.
Okay. Sorry, Alex, if you want to expand on that.
I just see that the other way. I think gamers like to celebrate their pastime together, right? You look at what happens when they open Gamescom to the public, and how different that show is to the business orientated days. Gamers love to gather together, play the new games, chat and congregate. Very often from a business perspective, that's when it's a pain in the butt to travel halfway across the world, or be somewhere for a week where that takes them out of the office. So personally speaking, I actually see it the other way around, but that's just my 2 cents, of course.
Yeah, maybe just because I primarily do B2B, I think it allows a really lovely place for B2B to work, and without the consumers attached to it. So yeah, I think, Rick, you do B2B plus stream content for consumers from my point of view. But again, there'll be a mix of it both, because not everybody will want everything else. So we'll figure it out as we go, but we will figure it out and make it work.
Elspeth?
I think pretty much everyone's covered it, but yeah, I think it is going to be probably a hybrid, and it maybe will actually depend on kind of location, because we don't know what's going to happen. It could be that people can't travel to the US, or people can't travel to Europe, so maybe there'll be a small event in Germany but it's streamed across the world, but then you get that kind of feel of a live event for the people that are there, and it kind of feels like it's an event with personality, and it's slightly different to what we're seeing online now, where things may be a little bit kind of sterile, I guess, but it could be a complete mix. I think we just don't know until we know how things are going to kind of pan out in the next year to 2 years, and how people are going to travel and connect and move around the world, I guess. But yeah, it's really hard. I don't know. I think we just have to be ready for anything.
I suppose I hadn't thought about it before, but I guess with VR and things as well, that's going to be interesting when we start getting people with their headsets on in a talk. But anyways, it just came to my head, that being a game changer, to be honest, for events as well. But yeah,
nobody wants to see me in VR, Leanne. Nobody.
Right. No. My screen in the back of me, but yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Leon, do you have any thoughts on this as well, on how we're going to see live online events evolve?
For sure. And then we'll have to jump on another call. I'm sorry.
Yes, of course, sir.
Hybrid for sure. I think what will happen, first of all, we need to all chill as event managers. It's going to be okay. Relax, breathe in, breathe out. Yes, it's all a change, and it's all very scary and all that kind of stuff, but realize that people need physical events. And even when it's not possible, you see what happens with all these like illegal raves and all these kind of things that are going on, which I do not promote. However, at the same time, people have a need to meet up. So I think that what will happen for sure, sunshine, nice, is that there will be a hybrid where possible, indeed, you will have physical events. What you already saw, for example, at China Joy, which took place a few weeks ago, it was a physical event. They had a few thousand people in that room, all with face masks on and these kind of things, but it's still possible. So I am hopeful for the future. I do think that from the perspective of return of investment, you will see, more investment in digital events because the return of investment is much higher on that. Mm-hmm. However, we have this need to meet up and hug. Yeah, hug. Hugging is good.
What a lovely thought.
Yes,
please. A nice way to end. Right, we'll wrap up there because obviously, Leon, you have to get off, and I'm sure we're all very busy. But thank you all for joining us, both the panelists and the attendees. We will have another one of our roundtables in a couple of weeks. I believe that one is on pitching to publishers. I will not be presenting that one because I am on holiday, and it'll be lovely. And also, we have Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki coming up in a few weeks. That is getting remarkably close now. So if you do not have a ticket and you're interested in coming, please do get a ticket. It will be magnificent and wonderful and excellent and great. That's it from me, and that's it from our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.